Sword Art Online Progressive Anime has been announced, so let's kick off Progressive Explained with a blast, which is just a fancy way of me saying I'll answer some of your key questions in a minute or two first, and then we'll get more in depth for those who want to hear more of the series. What is Sword Art Online Progressive? It is a spin-off series written by the author of the Sword Art Online series, Reki Kawahara, aiming to expand on the original Aincrad Arc story by filling the unknown parts of it. Progressive itself is thus not an arc, but rather part of the Aincrad Arc itself. It aims to progress floor by floor and so far has 6 volumes under its belt, covering up and including the 6th floor as well. While each book is usually a single floor long, Volume 1 covers floors 1 and 2, while Volumes 5 and 6 together cover floor 6 as the only exception so far. Is Sword Art Online Progressive a reboot? No, it is not. Not a hard reboot, not a soft reboot, just a revisit of the original Aincrad story that only features some minor retcons here and there, which is not any more than any of the later main series books retconning some of their own events. It is thus considered the definitive version of Aincrad, and in the case of differences with the original, Progressive takes precedence in regards to what is accurate and canon. Canon? But which one is canon? Progressive Light Novels or the Progressive Manga? Well, Progressive Light Novels are the source material for the Progressive series. Progressive Manga has gone through multiple iterations so far, each run varying in terms of its quality. All have diversions from the actual canon, with some only going for a heavily comedic tone without changing too much of the events, while others going as far as changing the entire course of events. Therefore, Progressive Manga as a whole is considered non-canon. Who's the main character of SAO Progressive? Well, Kirito is still very much the main character of Progressive. However, as things stand so far until Progressive 6, Asuna is a very close deuteragonist. The events are primarily from Kirito's perspective and knowledge, whereas certain instances switch over to Asuna's point of view. When is SAO Progressive Anime coming out? As of the making of this video, we simply do not know. The date featured in the beginning of the teaser trailer is the launch date of Sword Art Online in the universe, not the date for the anime. The anime currently has no release date or year announced. With all the burning questions out of the way, with simplified answers for those just wanting a quick overview, welcome everyone, it's me Gamerturk, your best source of Sword Art Online information, and this is Progressive Explained, featuring, well, the basic premise of Progressive being explained. I mean, I'm basically gonna be talking about the questions I answered at the beginning in a more comprehensive, in a more in-depth manner here. Don't worry, won't have any spoilers, except for the completely random background images I will be using as backdrop in the video with no context. So, worst case scenario, if you're too spoiler sensitive, if you don't want to see anything but still wanna hear me out, please act like this is an audio file or a podcast of some sort. But if you're new to my Explain series, what I do here is essentially give you all the information you need from the source material, light novels, so you can inform yourself the best way possible. If you want to jump to specific portions of the video, timestamps will be in the description, along with Amazon and Book Depository affiliate links so you can grab the novels for yourselves. You can jump ahead and grab the Progressive Light Novels in preparation for the anime, experience more of Alicization by grabbing volume 19 and 20, Moon Cradle side stories that take place for a week in the 200-year acceleration period, or pre-order your copy of Volume 21 United Ring 1, the start of the next main arc of Sword Art Online. And remember, light novels are the source material, not the manga. With that, let's cast away the sly foxes spreading misinformation and get on with Progressive Explained. Let's start with what is Sword Art Online Progressive. It was something Reki Kawahara had on his mind for a long time, since the time the original anime was in production phase actually. The original story of Aincrad was basically designed as a short story consisting of Kirito and Asuna's final days on Aincrad, with minor flashbacks of some past events. Basically, the original story consisted of the contents of Season 1 Episode 1 as a flashback, as well as Episodes 8 to 10, parts of Episode 11, and Episodes 13 and 14. The second volume of Sword Art Online, again called Aincrad, was a collection of side stories instead, filling out more of Aincrad, which were adapted in Episode 3, the Sachi episode, Episode 4, the Shilika episode, Episode 7, the Lisbeth episode, as well as the Yui episode, so part of Episode 11, and complete Episode 12. After writing the Fairy Dance arc and Phantom Bullet arc, as well as Mother's Rosario side story, Reki Kawahara partially returned to Aincrad with Volume 8 titled Early and Late. The murder case episodes 5 and 6 were adapted from this one, however a story called The First Day was completely cut out from the anime adaptation, and in its place the anime production requested a new story from Reki to adapt as a high stakes entry point of some sort, the first floor boss. And Reki did deliver that story. That story was the aria of A Starless Night, and that was where the idea of Sword Art Online Progressive was born. Sadly, the anime only adapted a very small portion of the story regardless, because Reki had written too much, with questionable accuracy at that. There are people out there who think Diawel was a hero of some sort because of this, or how lucky Kirito was to instantly find a partner like Asuna, but I digress. Hopefully, we'll get the proper story with the progressive anime, but with Aria of A Starless Night, Reki basically wanted to see for himself how the story of Kirito and Asuna would progress, how the story of Aincrad would expand incrementally, hence the title SAO Progressive. And of course, the initial story was way too fragmented. It was never meant to be such a big thing. It wasn't designed to become one. As a result, certain things had to change from the original going into Progressive. However, Reki Kawahara's approach to Progressive has never been a reboot, a clean slate. Progressive already starts after certain events have taken place, and thus doesn't even touch on those events other than clarifying that they exist, and thus it's not a reboot, those stories being what you watched in episode 1 of the original anime, as well as the first day story where Kirito was almost killed by another beta tester who wanted to get the anneal blade for himself. On top of all that, there are certain events throughout the journey that is Aincrad known to everyone. All pieces of information coming from different points in the story too, that the Progressive is wrapping itself around with minimal retcons rather than redefining entire stories. You know, things like the first floor being troublesome. We know Kirito and Asuna would separate at floor 25, which is kind of a massacre too. We know Klein and Furin Kazan join frontline somewhere before/around floor 40, where Yuna dies and Eiji retreats from the front lines for good. 50 is a massacre, the events of Sachi, Shilika, Elizabeth scattered all around there, etc. A clean slate never existed, thus a reboot was completely out of the question. However, the huge chunks of time skips in between the known events allowed a revisit approach with minimal changes to the story itself, and thus Reki continued from the end of Aria of A Starless Night, ending with Kirito stepping onto the second floor after dubbing himself the beater, with the start of the next story, Rondo for a Fragile Blade, on the second floor. The story, of course, continued: Concerto of Black and White, Barcarolle of Froth, Scherzo of Deep Night, and last but not least, Canon of the Golden Rule, and we find ourselves sitting on 6 volumes of Sword Art Online Progressive content, 7 volumes if we factor in the fact that volume 1 is a double-sized book. So as things stand, the amount of content Progressive has to offer is as much as season 1 and 2 combined. However, the storytelling of the books, knowing the priorities of the anime adaptations, will be interesting to see how things get adapted. Progressive has certain qualities, you know, it has tons of world building for Aincrad and Sword Art Online, but the anime hates world building. It has tons of inner monologues that dive deeper into the characters, but the anime hates inner monologues as well. It has very intricate battles and game mechanics that need to be explained, but the anime hates doing all that too. It has tons of awkward character moments instead of many epic ones, which the mainstream anime audiences hate. And in the end, Progressive is something the same mainstream audience did somehow not expect. It isn't a constant high-octane action, it's mostly just questing and grinding. This is an MMORPG. I do love Progressive, heck, most of us light novel readers do, because we're here for the interactions of these characters we know and love, but it certainly will be interesting to see how Progressive anime will land with all those concepts. I mean, anime adaptations hate half of what Progressive is, and the anime fans hate what the other half is, so it's an interesting combination for sure, but I digress. Where was I? Oh yes, let's talk about the light novel versus manga distinction. The source material for Progressive, much like a majority of SAO stories, is the light novel series written by Reki Kawahara. Much like every other SAO property, Progressive does have a manga adaptation as well. Much like every other manga adaptation of SAO, it is a massive mess on its own, with constant changes of mangaka having different runs, every mangaka having a different take on the story and the characters, some preferring to go original at some points. Like, sure, if you're gonna ask which adaptation is the most faithful adaptation of Progressive light novels, then yes, I will have to say it is the manga, solely because, well, the only other option is the Sword Art Online Integral Factor smartphone game with the original player character and a dozen other game original characters just randomly adapting bits from Progressive at random floors for no reason. But that is not to say the manga adaptation can be praised as an adaptation. For a long time we deemed the manga to be a very loose adaptation due to its inaccuracies and tonal choices throughout the story, but in the end there came a point where actual events were starting to be changed, at which point the manga was simply labeled non-canon. I also see many people going around claiming Asuna is the main character of Progressive and that everything is from her perspective, and that is not the case for the actual story. The current take is that the reason why Asuna is on the promotional material is because we already adapted Kirito's portion of the Ari of a Starless Night in the original anime, albeit heavily butchered, and with all that is left on that story being Asuna's backstory and approach to Aincrad, she will be the entry point to the story in the new anime, as all other entry points have been adapted, with the exception of the first day, but that is technically not a part of Progressive. But who are the main cast of Progressive then, you may ask, aside from the obvious main characters Kirito and Asuna? Without going into story related things, of course, Argo the Rat as well as Kismel, the Royal Guard of the Dark Elven Pagoda Knights, are basically head to head in terms of being the third main character of the series. They both are basically highly involved supporting characters, let's put it that way. Both guild leaders of Aincrad Liberation Squad and Dragon Knights Brigade, Kibao and Lind, have a major presence in the story so far and will continue to do so for a while longer. Accel and his bro squad also prove to be valuable allies for Kirito and Asuna on a regular basis. Aside from them, there are also plenty of other supporting characters and antagonists in no specific order: Litten, Shibata, Morte, Joe, Neza, and even the legend himself, Poe, that, unlike the others, you probably do recognize. All allies and antagonists are equally enjoyable to follow along with all their quirks and skills, to be honest, so definitely do look forward to meeting all of them. Sadly, we likely have to wait a long time before any possible client screen time. Perhaps a surprise appearance may be around the corner when we reach floor 10, which is still quite far away, and face Kagachi the Samurai Lord due to his topical relevance, of course, but otherwise we gotta wait until floor 40 for him and Furin-Kazan to actually become relevant to the front lines, which is, well, more than 30 years away at the current pace. As for the main cast characters like Lisbeth, Eiji, Shilika, Yuna, Sachi, etc., simply do not hold your breath. All but one of those characters have absolutely zero relevance this early in the game, so you won't get to see them for a long time as Progressive continues, sadly. And I guess that covers all I wanted to talk about for this Progressive introduction. As I said, the anime does not yet have a release date, or a release year for that matter, and the date shown at the beginning of the teaser is only the launch date of Sword Art Online, the game in the universe. However, stay tuned for the Sword Art Online After War event on November 8th. Almost the entire cast will be there and will likely get a bit more information on the anime in that panel. But yeah, if you have questions about Progressive in general sense, ask them in the comments down below using hashtag AskGamerturk. After the final weekly Alicization Q&A, I will be answering your Progressive related questions, and please do not ask directly story, spoiler related stuff. I will simply not answer them at all. If you're that curious for spoilers, just go ahead and read the books now. Amazon and book depository links are in the description. But if you made it this far, comment link start to let me know. If you enjoyed this short introductory explain for Sword Art Online Progressive, please do leave a like. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more in-depth coverage of SAO. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter for the fastest news possible. A massive thanks for the 50k subscribers, of course. To celebrate, the 50k subscriber special merch is now live, as usual, drawn by the amazing Jen K. A huge thanks to all my patrons and channel members as always, and until next time, stay cool.